From classic whodunits to modern psychological thrillers, each episode offers exclusive insights, behind-the-scenes stories, and discussions on the art of crafting compelling crime narratives. Whether you're a seasoned investigator or a newcomer to the genre, Books to Die For is your ultimate guide to the thrilling world of crime literature.
I'm Al Warren. I got Mr. John Copenhaver. How you doing, John?
Oh, I'm doing delightful today.
Okay, so now it's the Erin McCabe legal thriller, Book 4. It's called Nothing But the Truth. Country needs that a lot lately. So, Robyn Gigl, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, Al, thank you so much for having me. Good to see you. John, great to see you.
So when you write a book, and especially when you're writing a series like this is Book 4, you must think a lot about your characters and how you want them to be and how realistic they are. Do you have a certain method of doing that?
You know, I really don't, Al. It's when I conceived of Erin McCabe, I wasn't conceiving of it as a series. I thought it was, I was an unpublished writer at that point in time. I hadn't, Erin, By Way of Sorrow, the first Erin book, was my debut. So when I was writing that, I thought I was writing a one-book standalone. The characters were important to me. Certainly Erin was. Erin is a transgender criminal defense attorney. There was no one in terms of the legal thriller genre that I knew of that was like her. So I certainly thought a lot about her and what she represented. And her partner, her law partner, Duane Swisher, is a black man and a former FBI agent. So I thought a lot about him and how they could interact and the intersectionality of the issues that they would deal with in that book. And, I think as the book came together, certain characters that have gone through the arc of the 4 books, clearly some of them are a little bit more close to home in terms of who they are. Her boyfriend, Erin's boyfriend, Mark Simpson, is a character that I thought a lot about in terms of a cisgender heterosexual man who finds himself attracted to a trans woman and what that was like. And then, of course, Erin's family, and in particular her mom, Peg McCabe, who I have said right from, the first interview I gave for book 1, Peg McCabe is an homage to my mom. Obviously, Peg means a lot to me and the character means a lot to me.
How do you work the dialogue between these characters? Like, how do you work that out so that it's realistic? Because they're quite different, each character.
Look, I've been on this planet for a long time. I'm 71 years old. I've been a lawyer for over 47 years. So I think you get a sense of people and who they are and how they're going to speak and act. Again, just over the course of your lifetime dealing with so many people. And so when I envision a character, I'm thinking about what they look like, what their background is, even if it's not necessarily in the book, and how they're going to react and speak, and what their cadence is going to be, and whether there's a little bit of a dialect to it or not. One of the things that I love writing is dialogue. I'm not real good at descriptive passages. I'm much better, or at least I think I'm much better at dialogue. And so to me, it has to ring true in terms of who the characters are and how they're reacting to a given situation. And, one character is going to react differently to a situation than another, and you have to reflect that in the dialogue. So you have to know who your characters are and what their backgrounds are and how they're going to respond to any given situation.
So your premise of the book, let's talk about that. What's the basic premise of Book 4?
Basic premise of Book 4 is that a black investigative newspaper reporter has been found murdered, and the person accused of the crime is a white law enforcement officer. He's a New Jersey state trooper who also happens to be the first out and open gay state trooper. And he is accused of murdering the journalist, the motive being that the journalist was working on an expose of the New Jersey State Police and a rogue group of troopers within the New Jersey State Police called the Lords of Discipline. If I could kind of digress a little bit, the premise or the storyline of the book actually comes from two kind of situations that came up. I was doing a panel for the New Jersey State Bar Association on book 3, and a lawyer asked me a question as to whether or not Erin could ever represent someone who was accused of murdering a trans person. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting question. And I thought about it, and I said, the answer at the time was, I don't know, let me think about it. And I came to the conclusion that I, as a writer, couldn't do that. Maybe Erin, as a lawyer, could, but I, as a writer, couldn't do it. As I mentioned, Duane Swisher, her law partner, is a black man. There's been so much in the news and in the world of white law enforcement officers and their interaction with the black community, with people of color, indigenous people, the LGBTQ plus community, that I thought, well, maybe I could flip that a little bit. And what if Erin and Duane were called upon to represent a white law enforcement officer accused of murdering a black journalist? And then the second thread is I happen to have a good friend who was the first out and open gay male state trooper in the New Jersey State Police, and we were having brunch one day. I was talking about storylines, and I'm trying to figure out what the plot of book 4 is going to be. And he said to me, Google the Lords of Discipline. And I said, who? And he said, the Lords of Discipline. And he said, just Google it. He was still an active member of the New Jersey State Police at that point, so he couldn't say too much. And so I went home and I Googled it. And there really was an organization or a rogue group within the state police, or allegedly within the state police. They went after not only citizens in terms of going, after people for driving while black and framing people for crimes that they didn't commit, but they also went after their own. So they went after women state troopers, and they went after LGBTQ plus state troopers, and anyone that was not part of that group, they went after. And so that kind of became the genesis of the story. And Erin and Duane are contacted to reach this trooper who is alleged to have murdered the journalist. And they initially have to make that decision. Can Duane represent a white man accused of killing a black journalist? And then ultimately, it's the story of was this person guilty or were they framed? And it's the trial of that case that is the main part of the book.
How important is it for your main characters, let's say, grow through such a storyline as this? Or is it the storyline itself? How do you balance the two? Because your character, like Erin, has to, she will grow through this challenge at the same time as the storyline itself develops. Which is the more important to you, or which do you get more of, and how do you balance that?
So the other storyline that's woven through all 4 of the novels, but again in this one, and I have to be careful because I don't want to give too many spoilers here. But at the end of book 3, Erin gets engaged to Mark Simpson. And so there's a storyline that goes through this novel, book 4, Nothing But the Truth, of their relationship, as well as Mark has a sister, Molly, and she's a lesbian, and she's married to a woman by the name of Robyn. Go figure out how I came up with the name of that character. and they decide that they want to have a child. So I deal with, in vitro issues. And so in all of my books, I have this personal storyline that's woven into the legal thriller part of the storyline, and I like to do that because I think it humanizes the characters. They have a life outside of being lawyers, like we all do, like I do. You have to balance it carefully because you want to give people what they want, the legal thriller, but you also want to weave in that other storyline. And Al, I mentioned earlier that when I wrote By Way of Sorrow, the first book, I thought it was a one-book standalone. And they're all written as standalones. And if you pick up book 4 and you haven't read the other 3, it will make perfect sense to you. But if you read them in order, you will see that there is in particular to Erin, an arc to her story and how she grows over the 4 books, not only as a lawyer, but also as a person in terms of the confidence in who she is, because in the first book she had only transitioned a couple of years before that, and now here she is, 4 years down the road from the opening of the first book. And so you have that whole arc to Erin's story that when I conceived of the first book wasn't there, but as I wrote them, I wove that into them and knew kind of where it was going to go.
That's so interesting.
Whose point of view do you like to write from?
I mean, it's all third-person point of view, so I will flip back and forth between Erin and Duane, although Erin certainly is certainly the main point of view. But I also do, the people who are not necessarily the protagonist, the antagonist in the book, I write from their point of view, and sometimes that's a lot of fun. To get into the people who are on the wrong side and get in their heads and what motivates them and why they're doing the things that they're doing. I think I enjoy, for the most part, I enjoy being in Erin's head and expressing her point of view, although occasionally I'm in Peg's point of view, which is Erin's mom, and that's also fun too, because that's like climbing into my mom and channeling her in some ways.
I know you kind of, in many ways, cover the sort of 2 different threads of Erin's existence, but to what degree do they inform each other or shape each other? How would you sort of describe that in your work?
Yeah, I have built into all of the novels issues that are important to me as a trans woman, both personally and professionally. And I hasten to add, Erin is not me. This is not my way of trying to secretly, have another life through Erin. I do have lived experiences that are similar to Erin's. So, to me, it's been important to show both the professional competence of Erin, because, as I think some people think trans people, there's something wrong with us, and I wanted to show that Erin is a competent professional attorney. At the same time, I want to show that she's a human being, and she has human issues like we all do. And I think it's important to put that in there, to make a complete character, to show the humanness of the character, and that it's not just, that she's not just a cartoon character, she's not just a cartoon hero. She's a 3-dimensional person, obviously fictional person, that has flaws, has good points, has struggles, and tries to deal with her self-doubts that she has. And that's like all of us. And I think it's important with any character that they be 3-dimensional and real to the point that we have space to make them real. There's the professional part, but I want people to see Erin as a woman who is dealing with all the struggles that we all deal with in life.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's true. I mean, we tend to treat professionals as if somehow they can just take their human sides off, or, they just, I know you're controlling your emotion and controlling those things. The reality is that these things always intersect, and that makes for interesting storytelling, besides. So I'm always in awe of legal thrillers. I'm in awe of your writing and your book that you can. I think it's such a hard thing to sort of write, like to make. I know the reality of a lot of legal cases that they're not super exciting necessarily. They may have points of excitement, but your job as a thriller writer is to make it exciting. Can you talk a little bit about how you do that, or even, sometimes when it's been difficult, or I just think that's so interesting to me.
Yeah, I guess, I come at it from a little bit of a bias, in the sense that as somebody who has litigated cases for, I've been a lawyer for almost 47, so the first year I was a clerk, I wasn't litigating cases, but I've been litigating cases for over 45 years. I find them inherently fascinating and thrilling in their own right. But as you say, when you look at it as an outsider, there's so much other stuff that's going on that really is kind of dull and mundane and really not thrilling. So you have to distill it in a way that you're truly capturing what goes on in a courtroom, while at the same time not bogging down in legalisms and boring people with, minutia that really isn't necessary. Obviously, I as the author can make the case as exciting as I want, but it's also then taking, and I want to be really true to what happens in a courtroom. And sometimes what is the most exciting, figuring out what you're going to do the next day in a courtroom, or how you're going to attack a witness that, if you look at a trial transcript, you're not going to see. So you can add that behind the scenes look and that strategy, the chess game that goes on between lawyers when they're figuring out, okay, what witness do I put on next? How do I take away the sting that I know the other side, they're going to score some points on cross. How do I take that away from them? So that chess match that goes on in a courtroom, that kind of is fun to write because, again, as a lawyer, I know it exists. And I know if people watch, courtroom dramas on TV or movies, you kind of get some of that. But I want to bring that to the fore and see people, do a little bit of inside baseball type stuff for people so that they're seeing what really goes on between a prosecutor and a defense attorney and how the judge is playing into that and what the jury is thinking. So I have a lot of fun with it because, again, I start from the bias that it's inherently fun, and then I just have to make sure that I just don't bog people down in stuff that really doesn't advance the story. But I consider Presumed Innocent to be the basic, the well from which the modern legal thrillers sprang.
Yeah.
That to me is the fulcrum. I had been practicing law, again for, let's say, I forget exactly when it came out, but I had been practicing for a while. And I just remember reading that book and being just totally blown away by it, enthralled by what he had pulled off with that book.
You deal with a lot of sensitive subjects, but subjects that are very important and important to you. Let's talk about that. How you choose the areas you're going to go into and what you're going to talk about within the plot.
Each book kind of had a central theme in terms of not only what the arc of the story was, but about as you said, Al, about the issues that I wanted to deal with. By Way of Sorrow involves a young 19-year-old black trans woman who's accused of murdering the only son of the richest and most powerful politician in the state of New Jersey. And so I wanted to, kind of juxtapose this young black trans sex worker with Erin and how, even though they were both trans people, how different their lives were because of their circumstances. And not to say, not in any way making any judgments about it, but to show that even with trans people, there are people who have privileges. And I consider myself one of those people who's had a very privileged life. And so I wanted to show, here's someone who is also trans but doesn't have the same privileges and benefits that Erin has. And Sharice Barnes, who's the young black woman, is incarcerated in a men's jail. And that was an issue that I had actually litigated, not Sharice's case, obviously, but the issue of the incarceration of trans women. And so I wanted to deal with that issue. Survivor's Guilt, which is book 2, deals with the issue of the exploitation of young LGBTQ kids. So many of those kids are homeless because they have such horrible home lives when either they come out or they're out it. So I wanted to explore those issues. Remain Silent, which is book 3, I call it my angry book because there was, it was at that point in time when all the vitriol against the trans community was really coming to the fore. And I wanted to do an exploration of trans people as I knew them over my lifetime. So there's some trans characters in that book that would literally be my age. And then an 11-year-old trans girl whose dad gets custody because his ex-wife, the character's mom, is supportive of her, and dad is able to get custody of his trans daughter to put her through conversion therapy. So again, I wanted to deal with those issues because I think they're so important. And then in Nothing But the Truth, wanted to deal with the homophobia, the transphobia within law enforcement, and at the same time, it gets a little difficult because there's a spoiler here, deal with issues in terms of reproductive rights and alternative means of coming up with families, in particular for LGBTQ plus families. So, those are all issues that, for me are important to the LGBTQ plus community and to the trans community. And so, when I'm coming up with a plot, I want to be able to weave those issues into the plot seamlessly. And so that's why they're part of the storyline.
These are very important issues. And a lot of the issues that you talk about, you get into and write about, you must learn a lot, and working out the characters' feelings and how they act and interact and how people are and stuff. What does it do for you, each one of these books that you write? How does it change you, or what do you think happens to you?
I'd like to think I come away smarter. I like to think I come away, because I do characters who I don't have the lived experience of. I use sensitivity readers to make sure that, when I write a 19-year-old black trans, sex worker, that's not my lived experience. So I want to make sure it's authentic. And so I hope that by talking to people, by dealing with my sensitivity readers, that I grow as a person, that I have a better understanding, and that my characters accurately represent that understanding. I hope that certainly in terms of Nothing But the Truth, I have a really good friend and colleague who's a lawyer who has been doing family planning for LGBTQ plus couples for decades, and his name is Bill Singer, and Bill was absolutely instrumental in helping me to understand these issues and hopefully to get them right, because it's not an area of the law that I practice in. But again, you want to make sure that from a story point of view, you get the law and the issues and even the medical procedures necessary, you get them correct. And people like Bill were instrumental to me in terms of learning these issues, in terms of, some of the books have dealt with DNA issues. And again, I've never had the need to use that, but, you talk to people who do and you learn and you make sure that you get it right. So for me, it's been an educational experience. Each one of the books, I've enjoyed learning and hopefully growing in terms of my own knowledge of the issues.
Do you think about the reader as you write the books, or is the reader kind of over your shoulder as you put it together?
Yes, I think of the reader. I write the book that I want to write. Although my main protagonist, Erin, is a transgender woman, as John mentioned, my love of Scott Turow's books, I'm hoping that the same people that will pick up and read a Scott Turow book or read a John Grisham book or read a Lisa Scanalini book, that cisgender, heterosexual reader who loves a legal thriller, I want them to like my book. So I am not trying to beat anyone over the head with the issues that we've talked about, that I've woven in. I want that cisgender straight person to read the book and go, oh, this is a great legal thriller. So that part out, I do have the reader in mind in that I don't want to be preaching to people. I want the message that I'm trying to get across to be subtle. the Mary Poppins method. You give them what they want, that spoonful of sugar, which is the legal thriller, and then hopefully the medicine goes down a little bit easier. So that message that I'm trying to get across in terms of the issues, dealing with LGBTQ plus issues and dealing with trans issues is part of the story, and they're learning as they read and enjoy the legal thriller. So that's the way that I think of the reader. The story is what I want to write about, but I want to make it palatable to a wider audience, because if nobody reads my books, there's no reason to write them.
You do this really beautifully. I think that is one of the reasons I really admire them, is that you do, as you're reading a book, get a sense that you're just getting a legal thriller, and these are the issues that the legal thriller and these characters are dealing with. It's not didactic. It's natural to the. And you're right. I think these books are, anyone who likes legal thrillers are going to love these books.
Now, social media. Now, do you like readers to contact you? Do you have a social media website, anything like that set up?
Yeah, Al, if you do the math, when I said that I grew up in the 50s, you'll figure out that I'm 71 years old. So I am not the most proficient at social media. I see John on social media all the time. I'm so jealous of his.
Are you?
His abilities on social media, but I am on Twitter or X, whatever we want to call it these days. I am on Instagram, and I do try to post and get word out there. And I do have a Facebook page, but somehow I missed the Facebook train when it left the station, and so I'm still trying to play catch up with Facebook. So I am not great there, but yeah, I am always thrilled when people reach out, on Twitter or Instagram, and if I can find my way and figure out how to do things on Facebook when people reach out on Facebook. So it's always wonderful to hear from people that have read my books. It's again, I think one of the reasons why we do it is to know that our books made a difference in somebody else's life.
I appreciate you being on. We'll have your book up. We'll have your social media. We'll have things so people can find you. And there we go. The book, Nothing But the Truth. An Erin McCabe legal thriller, and it's book 4. Don't miss it. Robyn, Gigl, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Al. Thank you so much, John. Pleasure. Thank you both. It's been an honor to be here.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.